Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Estonia once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. So we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel many times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the years, many different styles, but I think it is fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of big malty strong beers, Imperial Stouts, Imperial Porters and things like this. But in my experience, they also do some very nice IPAs and lagers, and I personally would describe them as a very solid all-round brewery. But definitely one of the best known names when it comes to Estonian craft beer, and a brewery that I would highly recommend that you check out if you get the chance. Now, the beer we're going to have a look at today should be a very interesting one. It's an exclusive to the Finnish beer market. It's a style that I know these guys can do very well, and I was really quite lucky to get a hold of a bottle of this one to look at for you here on the channel. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to Tallinn in the northwest of Estonia, the capital city. And we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Põhjala Pruulikoda, or Northern Realm Brewery, as it would be in English. But this particular beer is called Frændi. It comes in at 16% ABV, and it's an Imperial Stout aged in Highland Park whiskey casks, also part of their cellar series, which is essentially Pohjala's barrel aged series. But yeah, like I said, this one was an exclusive release to Finland, and this was a gift from Riku, my Finnish beer mule. So big shout out and thank you, of course, to Riku Sinaksanaho in this video. This was one of the beers that he gifted to me. He put a few gifts in there along with the ones that I bought from him, of course. But yeah, didn't think I'd be getting this one, and it was a very nice surprise, I have to say. But at 16%, I think this is the strongest beer that I will review from Pohjala so far. So that's also quite interesting. But yeah, this one should be really nice, and I'm curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. So let's crack on with this one and see what we have. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Põhjala Pruulikoda before, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support you give is hugely, hugely appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography-based tagging system. Put your hometown, state, county, city, prefecture, whatever you like, into the search bar, and if I've reviewed beers from your local area, they should pop up. You can also look at the playlist of beers from different countries, and you will find this one in the Estonian playlist. But yeah, let's go on then and have a wee chat about Põhjala Pruulikoda then. On to my brewery notes. So, Põhjala Pruulikoda, or the Northern Realm Brewery as it would be in English, are based in Tallinn, the Estonian capital in the northwest of the country, and the company was founded by Peter Cake, Imperial and Green Nurmits, and they were later joined by Tiit Pananen as well. But the group went on a fact-finding trip to Brewdog in Scotland after Punk IPA reached Estonia, and it was there that two of the founders who were interning at Brewdog encountered Chris Pilkington, who went on to join them as their head brewer, and he's now a partner in the company as well. But Chris had actually graduated in marketing, but he was an avid home brewer, and he was producing some really interesting beers on the Brewdog pilot kit, and it was this that inspired the other Estonian guys to invite him to join them, and so he did, and it's been a great success story. But the company was officially founded in 2012, and then from 2013 they began to gypsy brew at a few other breweries around Tallinn. But they opened their first brewery in May of 2014 in the Nõmme district in the south of the city, and this had an initial capacity of 12 hectolitres, but this was scaled up considerably over the years. They started exporting their beer in 2015, and the brewery are really widely known throughout Europe these days and further afield as well. But they also had a tap room at this original brewery that had 24 different taps. In 2018 though, they moved to a new brewery in the Noblessner shipyard in northern Tallinn, and this new facility that they have is very impressive. It's got a 50 hectolitre, I believe it's a Rolex kit if I remember correctly. They've got an even bigger tap room there, and they've got a restaurant which serves American barbecue food, and they are looking at opening up a bakery at the moment as well, because it's two Americans that run the kitchen there. The guy is the barbecue chef, and his wife, of course, is a very talented pastry chef apparently. So yeah, they are looking at opening up a bakery within the facility as well. But you can check out my out and about video I did there if you want to look at the brewery. It is very, very impressive. One of the biggest craft breweries I've encountered actually. But like I said, Pohjala have been doing some really, really nice beers over the years. They're known for their big malty imperial stouts and things like this, but they do very solid lagers and IPAs as well. As of November 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 105 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, but I would not be surprised if the figure is actually higher than that. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Põhjala Pruulikoda for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys though, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Untappd page to learn more about the different beers, or you can check out some of my reviews that I've done from them over the years. But like I say, Pohjala are a very, very solid brewery, and probably one of the best known names when it comes to Estonian craft beer. But yeah, that's everything we need to say for the history section of this video. We can get on and actually focus on the beer itself. So like I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is called Frændi. The name of this beer is taken from the old Viking word for friend, from what I understand. It's a 16% Imperial Stout. The Highland Park barrels that this one is aged in were chosen by a Finnish whiskey importer called Edrington. So yeah, they picked their favourite barrels from Highland Park, sent them to Pohjala, and then they made this Imperial Stout that was released exclusively to the Finnish market. And I think this was an Alco release. I'm sure that's what Riku told me. But yeah, 16% Imperial Stout. It should be a bit of a monster. And yeah, this was a very nice gift, of course, from Riku. So big thank you to him for making this review possible. I really had no idea that I was getting one of these beers. But yeah, as you can see, the artwork on this one is kind of what we've seen from Pohjala before there. You can see the Pohjala symbol there in the middle. You can also see Highland Park. Highland Park, of course, are from Orkney, if I'm remembering correctly, one of the two sets of islands off the north coast of Scotland, somewhere that I do need to go and visit. I've heard it's very, very pretty. But you can see on the side there, it says Frændi, and of course it's using the Danish and Norwegian in there, the A and the E together, but a rich Imperial Stout aged in Highland Park cask, and it says served between 12 to 16 degrees C. So I did take it out of the fridge before we started the video, and it has been sitting for a wee bit. So yeah, this should be very nice. 16% Imperial Stout. I don't think we can go wrong with this one, but let's see. Yeah, we got it off first time. I was a bit worried about that actually. I was tempted to put the knife around the top there before we opened it. But yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. The Frændi Imperial Stout, 16% ABV from Pohjala in Tallinn, the Estonian capital. So yeah, this should be pretty cool. We have done several videos, of course, with Pohjala. We did like a meet the brewery sort of thing. Where did the tour? I did an interview with Chris and N, and then I did another video later on where I actually went and visited the restaurant when it was open. But yeah, you can check both of those out. Just put Pohjala into the search bar on the channel homepage and they will come up. But anyway, let's focus on this beer. As you can see, this thing, when this poured, it was an absolute monster. You can smell the booziness off this right away. Now, this beer doesn't have much of a head to it, which is kind of interesting. You've got a nice ring around the edge of the glass there, and it's a sort of fawny, tan-coloured head that you get on this one. You can see the bubbles there, which look very nice. You've got that lovely kind of fawn, tan-coloured thing to it. But yeah, the surface of the beer, you've got a few kind of wispy, things sitting on top of that, but that head has faded away very, very quickly with this one. But as you would expect from an Imperial Stout, it's pretty much black as night. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, it does look very, very nice, I have to say. Yeah, I like how this one is going, how it goes together. There's nothing really unexpected about the appearance of this beer. As we say, if we shine the light through this one, it does have a little bit of that kind of Coca-Cola Pepsi coloured edge to it, but this beer is pretty much black as night. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role. The longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect that too. But when it comes to black beers like Imperial Stouts and Porters, it really is quite hard to change the colour of these beers by doing things like that. You know, you can do it with some of the more brown sugary beers like barley wines and doppelbocks and stuff, but yeah, with stouts it is very, very difficult. But yeah, not much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, as we said, and to be honest, there's not really anything surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when we consider what style it is. So yeah, I think we should move on to the aroma and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. I think this is going to be an absolute monster though, so we'll see. Oh yeah, I'm going to say straight away, this is just ridiculous. This is an absolute monster of a beer. This is going to be pretty awesome. What I'll say about it though straight off, this is more like a kind of old school. The first impression I have of the aroma is that it's going to be like a more old school Russian Imperial Stout. So of course you're getting lots of woodiness out of this one. You can smell the whiskey in there. There's a good bit of the roasty toastiness. You've got chocolate, you know, you've got all of these sort of things going on. This is a very old school stout, this one. I'm very curious about the malt base in this. Where do we see? This one, it does contain oats. I was thinking that actually, because you can smell that it's very, very smooth, but it's got a little bit of rye in it as well. So it's oats and rye, which would account for a few interesting things in this one. But yeah, I think definitely this one is a more kind of old school Russian Imperial Stout actually. But that's one of the impressions you get of this, is you get the wood in there, you get the big smoothness, and you get the lovely fruits. Let's break this aroma down though and describe it for you properly in depth before we try the thing. So yeah, backbone of the beer, absolutely, you get this lovely smooth European oak out of this one. You can smell that straight away. Within the woody notes there's a little bit of nuttiness. You do have a little touch of vanilla in there. That's all in this one, but you've got a wee bit of dry woody character further back in the nose as well, which I really like. And yeah, I think that does go together very, very well actually. So yeah, lovely smooth woody backbone to this one. The little bit of vanilla, the little bit of like almost pecan nut in there. You can smell a wee bit of the whiskey in this one as well. When I've had Highland Park, I always remember Highland Park being a little bit floral, but at the same time being very, very smooth in some ways, and it always gave you that little bit of brown sugar, that little bit of nut, and the wee bit of dried fruit. You can kind of smell that in this beer as well actually. So you can smell that lovely smoothness from the Highland Park whiskey in this. So you just get the whiskey kind of sitting on top of the wood there. But you always have to, when you're using Scotch barrels to age Imperial Stouts, you have to be very careful, because certain whiskies, the smokier ones, can be very dominant. They can really take over the flavour of a beer very easily. But this one I think seems to be quite well balanced actually. And one of the other impressions that I'm getting of this beer when I smell it is that I do wonder if this is a double mash beer, especially when it's 16%, because that's one of the techniques you can use to get to that level of ABV. And you can just smell from the kind of thickness and stickiness that this beer gives you. I do think this is a double mash. I don't get the impression that this one has had an overly long wort boil, but we might find that out when we actually taste the thing. But yeah, on top of the whiskey layer in this beer, you absolutely get a little bit of that roasty toasty well-fired bread crust. On top of that, I'm getting a kind of Christmas pudding type note with this one, like a Scottish Christmas pudding. It really smells like that oily, cakey type thing. Chocolate brownie, kladdkaka might be a good way to describe it for the Swedish or the Finnish and Estonian noses and things, definitely. So above the roasty toasty well-fired malt, you've got this brandy soaked like chocolate cake type aroma in there, and on top of that you can certainly smell some nice chocolate. It's got a little bit of dryness to it, like a cocoa nib, maybe about 70% cocoa further back on the nose, and a sort of 30%, 40% more milk chocolatey character further forward. So that's absolutely in there. You do get some nice kind of sweet rye bread out of this beer as well, absolutely, when it's got the rye malt in there. that makes sense. So maybe that's, you've got the cakey layer, the rye bread layer, then the kind of chocolate notes in this one. And with the brown sugars, I actually get, the more that I smell of it, I start to get those more kind of leathery things that I was saying I didn't pick out earlier. So this is one of these aromas that really develops and shows you more and more as you go further on with it. But absolutely, a little bit of kind of chocolate in this one, as we said, some leathery brown sugars, a sweet oily treacle molasses type thing to this one as well, which I do really like. So yeah, sweet oily treacle molasses kind of thing, sweeter caramel underneath it, and then that more leathery kind of note. But for me, this is a surprisingly kind of cakey and puddingy leaning Imperial Stout, this one. It might just be because of the sheer alcohol strength. We'll need to see how it comes out in the actual flavour. But you can certainly smell the smoothness in this one. It's got a lovely, it really does have a kind of just lovely smoothness to it, this beer. So it gets a big thumbs up from me from that particular perspective. Yeah, is there anything else we need to say about the malty side of this one? I don't think so. I think we've covered most of that actually. On the hoppy side of things, it's got a little bit, I mean, I think it was aged for 9 months if I remember correctly. I think they said it was 9 months in the Olut Posti article that Riku sent me about the beer. I'm sure they said it was 9 months. But yeah, with this one, of course, you can keep this beer at 16%. You can keep this for a while and, you know, just enjoy it whenever you like. The 16% Imperial Stout is not going to go off. But the thing is, the longer you keep this beer, the more the hoppy character is going to drop out of it. It's got a little bit of earthiness to it for sure. There's a little bit of a herbal quality in there. And there's also some really nice little bits of grassiness and floral character in there. But like I say, these are quite minimal. And Imperial Stout is not the most hop forward of beer styles. But yeah, it does actually, you know, it does drop out. You can tell the hoppy character has dropped out of this beer a little bit, but it's still there. There are still little remnants of it there. Let's focus on the fruity side of things before we go on and taste the beer. So, when it comes to the fruity side of the beer, like I've said, this one has this really kind of boozy, chocolate cakey, you know, brandy soaked Christmas pudding type aroma to it. You get a lot of that out of this beer. So the fruits that you get out of this one, it kind of has like a backbone of a date and a prune. There's a little bit of like sultana in there as well, and some oily pear. You have got some of the richer red fruits though. It's actually like a very kind of medicinal, cough syrupy Cavonia type thing that you're getting out of the fruity side of this beer though. So yeah, like I say, prunes, dates, a little bit of sultana, but there's a little bit of there is a bit of a straight up plum for sure, a little bit of blackcurrant and blackberry. Yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really quite nice and very, very interesting. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, I do like this. I like this beer. So the aroma of this is pretty awesome. I have to just say I'm very, very curious to see what it's going to have in store for us. So let's taste this one and see what we have. This one is the Frændi, part of the Cellar series, an exclusive release to Finland, 16% Imperial Stout from Pohjala Pruulikoda in Tallinn in Estonia, aged in Highland Park whisky casks chosen by Edrington Whisky Importer in Finland, an exclusive release to the Finnish market. So let's get stuck into this one. Slanju, skål, tervisex, as they would say in Estonia, kipis, as they would say in Finland. Cheers. Yeah. This is really interesting. It's an awesome beer, this. I'm going to say that straight away. This is an awesome beer, but this is a lot more roasty and toasty in the flavour than I was thinking it would be from the aroma. This one, it really, the aroma of this varies quite a lot from the flavour actually. So this really is more of like an old school, just big heavy Russian Imperial Stout. But when you actually smell this thing, it's almost as if it has some kind of pastry. It almost has some kind of pastry stout elements to it. But what I'll say is it's a beautiful, beautiful beer, this one. A lot more grainy, a lot more roasty and toasty than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, this is awesome. So big thumbs up to Pohjala. Not surprised, because these guys do some awesome beers in this category. But yeah, this is quite different from what I was thinking it would be from the aroma. I have to say that. Yeah. Really like how this goes together. Yeah, where do we start with this one then? Middle of the palate. So, backbone of the beer. You can feel that lovely, smooth, oaky character there. And of course, it's a European oak, so it's a little bit drier than you're going to get from some of the, you know, the bourbon barrel aged things that you'll find from the Pohjala cellar series. But yeah, you get that nice, smooth, oaky backbone to this one. On top of that, you can feel the whiskey as well. And like I said to you, for me, Highland Park actually has a good little bit of smoothness to it, but it's got quite a floral character and, you know, nice dry fruits as well. You can feel all of that sitting on top of the woody flavours in this beer. So you feel that, you really feel that Highland Park base in this one. And then as you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of the kind of nutty and woody. You do get a little bit of the nutty and almost slightly vanilla type character coming out of this one. But yeah, you can feel the sort of floral character coming out of the Highland Park in the base of this beer too. So it's really interesting, as I say, how all of that goes together. So, yeah, that's just the base of the beer. It's interesting because you've got a lot more complexity to this beer, but it really does let you know that this is, you know, it really does give you that the Highland Park cask in this one are quite dominant. And again, this is what I said earlier. Scotch whisky cask can be very dominant when it comes to determining the flavour of these sorts of beers. But yeah, above that though, you start to get the nice, you do start to get that nice roasty, toasty, well-fired, bread crusty character. Absolutely, that is there. This beer it's nowhere near as cakey, at least in the middle of the palate, as I thought it was going to be from the aroma. So yeah, above the kind of whiskey layers, you've got that roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crust, absolutely. Then you can feel the sort of layer of rye bread in there, and it's actually quite dry. The rye bready character that you get out of this beer really is quite dry. Above that, you can feel the kind of you can feel the sort of oaty layer. You do have a little bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready note in there, and I think the oats are kind of contributing to that. But above the bready layers, you start to get the chocolatey side of the beer, and at the back of that middle third of your palate, you get a more kind of 70-80% cocoa chocolate. But as you move further forward on the palate, it really does start to mellow out a little bit. Remember, more bitter and dark flavours come out further back on the palate, the sweeter flavours come out further forward. So the roasty toasty, kind of malty flavours underneath actually build a good bridge with that. So you get the how would we say, the higher percentage cocoa chocolate further back, and the lesser, more milky chocolate further forward. On top of that though, you've got the brown sugars, and I'm still trying to figure out with this beer. I do wonder if this is a double mash, but it's really quite hard to tell in this beer. Normally you can tell because of how big and thick and sticky the thing is, but what you always have to remember is that when you barrel age a beer, you sacrifice a little bit of the mouthfeel to get all these infused flavours. And I think I've got a feeling this is double mash, but I think the barrel aging is just taken away a little bit of the thickness of the mouthfeel, so it's a bit harder to tell with this one. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really nice from that perspective. So yeah, you've got the chocolatey side of things in there, then you get this layer of leathery, the brown sugar. So we'll talk about the brown sugars from up to down. So in the dead centre of your palate, as I always say, you get that nice circle, the oily circle in the middle of your palate. You can feel in the dead centre of your palate, you have got a little bit of a straight up caramel in there, but as you move further out from that, you start to get the more there's a little touch of like treacle and molasses in there. Then underneath you get the really leathery brown sugar, and the leathery brown sugars kind of linger in this beer a little bit, and they've almost just got a little bit of this kind of, it's almost got like it's like an almost marzipan-y type flavour with these brown sugars as well, which is really quite interesting. And I wonder if that's coming from the whiskey barrel. I mean, you can get these sort of rubbery marzipan-y type flavours in some whiskies, and yeah, I'm certainly noticing that a little bit in this beer, I have to say. So yeah, the brown sugars certainly sit on top of the kind of chocolatey layer. You look really leathery, long boil things in there. You've got the sweet, you've got the big treacle molasses in there, and the sweeter caramel. So yeah, the way this beer goes together, I think, is really nice. So yeah, the way this beer goes together in the middle third of the palate, I think that's the most complex part of the beer. But like I say, it is very, very nice. Yeah, let's go on to the back third of the palate and see what's going on there. So the border region between middle and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a kind of build up in there. It's a wee bit toasty and well fired. It's kind of almost cakey. But then yeah, the base of the back third of the palate, you get the whiskey and the wood again, but the wood is a lot drier. The whiskey is certainly there. Above that, you start to get the roasty, toasty, well-fired notes are certainly a bit stronger. You've got the rye bready layer, which is again a bit more grainy, but it's a bit taller as well. Then you get the wholemeal brown bready layer, which again is a wee bit taller. But above all of that, you get this kind of cakey layer. So the border region between middle and back third of the palate, you get this really kind of brandy-soaked, cakey kind of note in it. Then above that, you get the you can feel that sort of sits, it sort of moves on top of the wholemeal brown bready layer on the back third of the palate too. So it's quite interesting how that pieces together as well. Above all of that though, you're starting to get the more kind of yeasty ester quality out of this beer. So that's definitely worth checking out in this one. So let's focus on those flavours for the moment. So yeah, above all of that on the back third of the palate, you can feel this sort of light, airy, cakey brown bread. That's there. There's a wee bit of like brandy soaked kind of honeycomb, cough syrupy type notes in there. So the yeasty esters above all of that, yeah. It's like a wholemeal brown bread. It's kind of cakey. It's got a little bit of a more yeah, it's got a little bit of a more just boozy. It's just got that kind of boozy brandy soaked bread there. There's a little bit of woodiness. There's a little touch of nuttiness and things there. So yeah, you can feel all those yeasty esters sitting above all the flavours that I've just described for you. But yeah, back third of the palate, the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward, it just condenses down and squashes together that little bit more into the middle third of the palate. So yeah, I think we've covered everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of this beer. Let's look at the hoppy side of things in this one then. So, as I said earlier, this beer's been barrel aged for 9 months. Like a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out, but some of it is still there. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness. As you move further forward, you get a little touch of herbal quality, and as you push toward the kind of front corners of the palate, there's definitely a little bit of a sort of floral, spicy note to this one. But of course, the longer this beer is 16% ABV, the longer that you age it, the more that hoppiness is going to drop out. So yeah, nice little bit of floral spice in there, round the front curve of the palate. It's a little bit lighter and grassy, and there is just a little touch of yeah, there is just a wee touch of a kind of zesty character remaining there from the green component in this one, but it does go together very, very well. So yeah, flavour wise, the hoppy side of this beer is still there, and it just adds that wee bit more depth to it as well. But let's focus on the front third of the palate and the kind of fruity side of the beer as well. So border region between pardon me, front third and middle third of your palate, you do get a little bit of that kind of cakey, chocolate brownie type build up in this one. So that is absolutely there. And I would say it is like a kind of brandy soaked fruit loaf, Kladkake type thing in this one. So yeah, definitely some of that going on there. The base of the front third of the palate though is more kind of brown bread, rye bread, and a wholemeal. Kind of wholemeal brown bread thing, but again it's sort of brandy soaked, and on top of that you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. But yeah, the fruity side of this beer is really interesting, and this is one of these beers where it's very complex in its flavours. They take a bit of time to evolve, but the way everything pieces together is what makes this beer very, very interesting. So on the fruity side of things, it's kind of what I was describing in the aroma actually. So when you first take the beer in, at the back of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of raisiny sharpness in there. Underneath that, you get a bit of juicy plum, but then under that, you've got the more dried prune and sort of datey quality. You've got a bit of sultana mixing in there as well. But as you move further forward toward the centre of that front third of your palate, you start to get a little bit more of a figgy note. And then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, it's a wee bit more kind of black curranty and blackberry like. So yeah, definitely a wee bit of that going on. Yeah, definitely a wee bit of black, yeah, a little bit of fig, a little bit of black currant, and yeah, a few other things above that. So on top of the front half of the front third of your palate in this beer, it's definitely more blackberry like, but the things that really linger into the aftertaste with this beer, it's the dates, the prunes, the sultana, and that kind of brandy soaked fruit loaf type quality. Yeah, it's really interesting that this beer, I can feel the booze going to my head in this one, but yeah, the dry fruity characters in this beer and the sort of cakey notes that it develops into the aftertaste are very, very interesting. But when it's 16% ABV, it's not surprising that you get these kind of flavours, but in some way it is surprising just, you know, how everything pieces together in this one. So this beer initially, it shows you a lovely big kind of old school Russian Imperial Stout quality, but the further you go into the aftertaste, I think the barrel really starts to show you these more kind of dry, cakey, fruity type qualities, which is quite interesting. But an awesome beer from Pohjala, and I can't just have to, you know, can't compliment them enough on this. This is really quite interesting. Probably one of the quirkiest beers we've had from the Cellar series. Let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. I think unquestionably this is a full-bodied beer. Would be silly to suggest otherwise. So yeah, lovely big full-bodied, silky, but still clean feeling Imperial Stout. This one, in terms of IBUs, for me it's a little bit hard to determine because you have got a lot of roasty toastiness in this one, and you also do have a bit of dryness. This has got to be like, must be about 40 or 50 IBUs, something like that. Always take my IBU counts with a pinch of salt, though that's my weakest point when it comes to beer reviewing. But yeah, you do have quite a bit of dryness and roasty toastiness in this beer, so it's not the same as hoppy bitterness, but still you have that in there. The malt base, as we said, you've got the woody character back in this one up, which is more of a dryness. You've got a lovely sweetness in there, sweetness, dryness, oiliness in the sweeter malty side of things. The fruity character of the beer as well. Good bit of dry fruit, nice little bit of sweet oiliness. Yeah, the way that this beer goes together, I think, is very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. Probably not my best description of the mouthfeel of this one, but as I say, big, thick, oily, and slick Imperial Stout. At 16% ABV, this is one of the beers that's going to fuck your day in the best way. I think that's a fair way to describe this one. But beautiful beer, flavour wise. Yeah, it's absolutely a sipper. We've drunk quite a little bit of that of this one in this video. But what can you do? That's what happens when you review a lovely Imperial Stout. So yeah, all I can do with this beer is compliment Pohjala with this one. I hope I've described the flavour quite well. This was the Frændi, a 16% Highland Park barrel-aged Imperial Stout from Põhjala Pruulikoda in Tallinn in Estonia. Really lovely beer, this one. And I'm sure I'll be returning to Estonia at some point in the future to meet my good friend Einar once again. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Pohjala Pruulikoda as well. And we will definitely return to these guys at some point in the future. Thank you again to Riku for making this review possible. In the meantime, check out my social media, check out Pohjala's social media, and we will be returning to the Cellar series from these guys at some point soon. But until the next time, Slange, Skull, cheers, Tervisex, Keepus, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Try this one if you get the chance. This beer is an absolute monster. Slange, Skull, cheers, Keepus, and Kitos.